I thought the first promotion would feel like relief. Not joy, not fireworks, just that quiet exhale where you finally believe you're safe. I had spent years collecting proof, late nights, saved projects, calm answers in messy meetings, the kind of consistency that turns you into furniture, always there, always useful, quietly taken for granted. The day they told me, it happened in a glass conference room with a view of the parking lot. The sun was bright, but the air conditioning made it feel like winter. My manager smiled like he was delivering a gift, and I watched his hands more than his face. He slid a printed sheet across the table. New title, new responsibilities, a number that was higher than last year, but not high enough to make me forget how tired I was. I nodded at all the right moments. I said thank you. I acted humble. I acted grateful. Inside, I waited for the feeling to arrive, like happiness was running late and would show up once I got back to my desk. It didn't. I walked out of that room and the hallway looked the same. The fluorescent lights hummed the same. The carpet had the same stains. People passed me and didn't know my title had changed, which made the whole thing feel strangely private, like I'd just been handed a secret I wasn't sure I believed. At my desk, the emails were already stacked. A client complaint, a calendar invite titled Urgent, a thread where someone had tagged me because they didn't want to solve something themselves. I stared at the inbox and realized the promotion wasn't a doorway. It was a bigger version of the same room. That was my first lesson, though I didn't name it yet. I had been chasing a title, but what I really wanted was a different life. And those two things don't always come together. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. Nothing exploded in that moment. It just became impossible to unsee. I kept doing the work, but I stopped letting it be the only thing that defined me. That's when I understood the difference between progress and peace. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. Nothing exploded in that moment. It just became impossible to unsee. I kept doing the work, but I stopped letting it be the only thing that defined me. That's when I understood the difference between progress and peace. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. That night, my wife tried to celebrate. She picked up a small cake from the grocery store, the kind with too much frosting and a plastic congratulations sign stuck into the top. She set it on the counter like it was a trophy. I watched her light 2 candles, and I felt guilty for not feeling happier. She hugged me and said, "I'm proud of you." I said, "Thank you," and meant it. But there was a flatness in my voice that I couldn't disguise. It wasn't sadness exactly. It was the absence of the thing I had expected to show up. At dinner, she asked what the raise was, and I told her. She did quick mental math the way partners do, calculating what it means for the mortgage, the savings, the future. Then she asked softly, "How do you feel?" I gave her the responsible answer. "Relieved," I said. "It's good. It's progress." The words sounded correct, like something a stable adult should say. She listened, and then she did something that made the question sharper. She waited. The silence held long enough that my fake answer started to feel heavy. Finally, I said the truth, quieter. "I don't know," I admitted. "I thought it would feel different." She didn't argue. She didn't lecture. She just nodded like she'd been expecting that too. "Maybe you're just tired," she said, trying to help me exit the conversation without shame. But I knew it wasn't only tiredness. Tiredness is when you need rest. This felt like something deeper, like I'd been living inside a story where the next milestone was supposed to fix the previous chapter and it wasn't doing its job. I went to bed with that thought in my head and woke up with it still there. The promotion hadn't made me happier. It had only made the question louder. If this isn't it, then what am I actually doing? I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. Nothing exploded in that moment. It just became impossible to unsee. I kept doing the work, but I stopped letting it be the only thing that defined me. That's when I understood the difference between progress and peace. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. Nothing exploded in that moment. It just became impossible to unsee. I kept doing the work, but I stopped letting it be the only thing that defined me. That's when I understood the difference between progress and peace. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The next week, the new role arrived the way it always does, through other people's assumptions. My calendar filled up with meetings I hadn't asked for. People introduced me in rooms with my new title, and it sounded impressive when they said it, like it belonged to someone more confident. Then the work started to change, not in a way that felt bigger, but in a way that felt heavier. Instead of solving problems, I was managing the people who were supposed to solve them. Instead of being valued for being sharp, I was valued for being calm. The praise shifted from great work to thanks for handling that. Handling, absorbing, containing. One afternoon, a director I barely knew stopped by my desk and said, "Congrats, we need you on this." He spoke as if my promotion had been issued for his convenience. He dropped a binder on my desk like he was leaving a package at the door. "This account is unstable," he said. "You're reliable." There it was again. Reliable, the compliment that slowly becomes a sentence. I stayed late that night, not because I had to, but because I was afraid of being exposed. New titles come with new expectations, and I could feel people watching, waiting to see if I was as capable as the promotion suggested. I didn't want to disappoint them. I didn't want to disappoint the version of myself that had chased this. At 8:30 p.m., the office was quiet. The air smelled like stale coffee and printer toner. I walked to the break room and stared at the vending machine, listening to the building settle. I thought about my younger self, the one who used to dream about climbing. I used to think the top would feel warm, but the top felt cold. That's the part no one says out loud. Promotions don't only give you more money, they give you more obligation, more visibility, more politics, more time spent interpreting other people's moods. If you're not careful, you end up promoted into a life you don't even like. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. Nothing exploded in that moment. It just became impossible to unsee. I kept doing the work, but I stopped letting it be the only thing that defined me. That's when I understood the difference between progress and peace. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. Nothing exploded in that moment. It just became impossible to unsee. I kept doing the work, but I stopped letting it be the only thing that defined me. That's when I understood the difference between progress and peace. A month later, I got the performance feedback. It wasn't official, just the kind of hallway praise that's meant to keep you running. My manager told me I was doing great, that leadership was impressed, that I should keep pushing. He said it like a coach, and I tried to receive it like an athlete. But in the same conversation, he mentioned a new expectation. We need you to be more strategic, he said, less in the weeds. It sounded like an upgrade. What it meant in practice was that I was now responsible for outcomes I couldn't directly control. I was supposed to influence without authority, steer without steering wheels, own decisions that would be made above my head. Strategy in that building often meant carrying the blame gracefully. I walked back to my desk and felt a strange anger. Not at him, but at the whole game. I had been promoted into a category where the work becomes less about doing and more about being aligned, being agreeable, being the kind of person who can swallow frustration and turn it into a calm email. That afternoon, I sat in a meeting where two senior people argued in circles for 40 minutes about a problem neither of them understood. When the meeting ended, one of them turned to me and said, "Let's get your take." He said it as if I was a judge, as if my words could settle it. I looked at their faces and realized something sharp. They didn't want my take. They wanted my permission. They wanted someone to validate their direction so they wouldn't have to own it alone. So I spoke carefully. I used the right language. I made it sound neutral. They nodded, satisfied, and as I walked out, I felt a kind of emptiness I didn't know how to describe. The room was full of grown adults avoiding accountability, and I had become useful because I could help them do it politely. That was the moment the promotion stopped feeling like recognition and started feeling like a trade. I had traded my time, sure, but I had also traded my honesty. I could feel myself becoming smoother, safer, less alive. And I started to wonder if happiness was ever part of this ladder, or if I'd invented that part to keep climbing. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. Nothing exploded in that moment. It just became impossible to unsee. I kept doing the work, but I stopped letting it be the only thing that defined me. That's when I understood the difference between progress and peace. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. It's hard to admit you're unhappy when everyone tells you you're winning. That's the trap. People see the title and assume you must feel proud. They see the raise and assume you must feel grateful. They don't see the private cost, the way your mind never quiets, the way your body forgets how to relax, the way Sunday evening becomes a slow leak of dread. I tried to fix it the way I fix most things, by working harder. I convinced myself that once I settled in, it would feel better. Once I mastered the new scope, it would feel better. Once I proved myself, it would feel better. The problem with that logic is it never ends because the system is designed to reward your appetite for approval. One Saturday morning, I went into the office alone to catch up. I told my wife it would be quick. The building was empty in a way that made it feel like a museum of stress. Lights half on, hallways quiet, my footsteps loud on the tile. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop and felt nothing. No urgency, no passion, just motion. I realized I could do this for 10 hours and still not feel finished, because the work wasn't something you complete. It was something you feed. Around noon, I walked to the window and looked out at the highway. Cars moved in steady lines, people going places, living Saturdays. I felt like I was watching life through glass. That's when a thought hit me, calm and cruel. The promotion didn't make me happy because the job wasn't the problem I was trying to solve. The problem I was trying to solve was inside me. I wanted the promotion to prove I was enough. I wanted it to erase the fear that I was wasting my time. I wanted it to justify the years I'd already spent. And when it didn't do that, I didn't know what else to blame. I drove home and tried to act normal. But later, when my wife asked how it went, I couldn't lie. "It's not fixing it," I said. "Whatever I thought this would fix, it's not doing it." She didn't look surprised. She looked sad, like she'd been standing near the truth for a while. And that's when I realized this wasn't a work problem anymore. This was a life problem dressed up as ambition. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. Nothing exploded in that moment. It just became impossible to unsee. I kept doing the work, but I stopped letting it be the only thing that defined me. That's when I understood the difference between progress and peace. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The shift started small. It wasn't a dramatic resignation or a midlife meltdown. It was a quiet change in how I measured my days. I stopped asking, or did I perform, and started asking, did I feel like myself? That second question is harder because it doesn't come with a checklist. I began noticing the moments that drained me, the meetings where everyone spoke in code, the emails that required 3 layers of politeness to avoid conflict, the praise that sounded like a compliment but functioned like a leash. I also noticed the moments that energized me, and they were surprisingly simple: a problem I could solve directly, a conversation that was honest, a project where the result was visible and real. One afternoon, I took a long walk at lunch and didn't answer my phone. I sat on a bench and watched a man fix a flat tire in the parking lot. It was ordinary, almost boring, but the simplicity felt like medicine. The man's problem had an end. He tightened the lug nuts and moved on with his day. My problems didn't end. They multiplied and renamed themselves. That night, I opened an old notebook and wrote down the things I had enjoyed before my life became a ladder. Not hobbies in a cheesy way, but real preferences. Working with my hands, teaching someone something, building systems that actually helped people. The list surprised me because none of it required a title. I didn't quit. Not yet. But I started to detach my identity from the promotion. I stopped treating my job as evidence of my value. That sounds simple, but it's a violent change if you've spent your whole adulthood using work as a mirror. I set a small boundary and watched what happened. I declined a meeting that didn't need me. No one collapsed. I delayed a non-urgent response until morning. The world didn't end. I realized how much pressure had been self-imposed, like I'd been tightening my own collar for years. And then one evening, my wife said something that made the whole story clearer. "You're not happier because you wanted the ladder to fix a feeling," she said. "But feelings don't get fixed by ladders." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was true. And for the first time in months, the laugh sounded like me. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. Nothing exploded in that moment. It just became impossible to unsee. I kept doing the work, but I stopped letting it be the only thing that defined me. That's when I understood the difference between progress and peace. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. After that, I started talking to people quietly, not in a dramatic "I'm leaving" way, but in a curious way. I asked friends what their promotions had cost them. Most of them had never said it out loud. When they did, they spoke like they were confessing. One guy told me his title had tripled and his sleep had vanished. Another told me the raise was real, but the freedom wasn't. A woman I respected said, "The higher you go, the more you get paid to manage disappointment." That sentence stayed with me because it sounded like a job description no one posts. I began to notice a pattern. The happiest people I knew weren't always the highest ranked. They were the ones who had chosen their trade on purpose. They knew what they were willing to give, and they refused to give more just because someone asked nicely. They weren't lazy. They were clear. At work, I practiced being clear. I stopped saying yes automatically. I asked, "What's the priority?" I asked, "What happens if we don't do this?" Those questions made some people uncomfortable because they punctured the myth that everything is urgent. They also revealed how much of the workload was emotional theater. I didn't become reckless. I became honest. That was the difference. I still did my job well. I just stopped pretending that doing it well would automatically make me feel fulfilled. One afternoon, I sat in that same glass conference room where the promotion had been announced. We were discussing next steps for a project, and someone suggested I take on another responsibility. I heard the old reflex start to rise. Prove yourself, absorb it, be grateful. Then I did something new. I said, "I can take that, but it means I'm dropping this other thing. Which matters more?" The room got quiet. People looked at each other. They realized they had to choose. And in that quiet, I felt a small return of power. Not power over people, but power over my own life. That's what the promotion had never given me. It had given me status without agency. The agency had to be taken one sentence at a time. I left the meeting and realized something else. Happiness wasn't waiting at the next rung. If I kept climbing without changing the reason I climbed, I would just carry the same emptiness upward. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. Nothing exploded in that moment. It just became impossible to unsee. I kept doing the work, but I stopped letting it be the only thing that defined me. That's when I understood the difference between progress and peace. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. I still believe in achievement. I still believe in competence. I don't tell this story to shame ambition. I tell it because ambition can become a way of avoiding harder questions. Promotions are easier to chase than clarity. Titles are easier to earn than peace. When I look back, I see the mistake clearly. I assumed recognition would settle the restlessness. I assumed a higher role would bring a deeper satisfaction. But satisfaction doesn't come from being seen. It comes from being aligned when the work you do matches the life you want to live. The promotion didn't make me happy because it didn't change what my days felt like. It changed what my days looked like from the outside. That distinction matters more than most people admit. If I could go back to that glass room, I wouldn't refuse the promotion. I would just refuse the fantasy attached to it. I would accept the role, but I would also ask immediately what I'm giving up to earn it. I would ask how it changes my time, my family, my health, my mind. I would ask where the invisible bill will arrive. Now, when I hear someone say, "Once I get that title, I'll feel better," I don't argue. I just recognize the hope behind it. I recognize the way we try to buy emotional security with professional milestones. It's a reasonable attempt. It's just not how the system works. The best change I made wasn't a career move. It was learning to separate my worth from my work. That separation didn't make me lazy. It made me calmer. It made me harder to manipulate. It made my choices cleaner. And the strange thing is, once I stopped demanding happiness from promotions, I started finding small happiness again on ordinary nights, in unhurried conversations, in weekends that felt like mine. The ladder is still there. I can climb it if I choose, but I no longer climb it to fix a feeling. I climb it only if it fits the life I'm trying to protect. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. Nothing exploded in that moment. It just became impossible to unsee. I kept doing the work, but I stopped letting it be the only thing that defined me. That's when I understood the difference between progress and peace. I didn't say it out loud then, but I could feel the gap between what I'd earned and what I actually wanted. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was cleaner than pretending the next milestone would fix the same ache. Nothing exploded in that moment. It just became impossible to unsee. I kept doing the work, but I stopped letting it be the only thing that defined me. That's when I understood the difference between progress and peace.